in 24th Separate Assault Battalion, also known as IDAR, which operates alongside Ukraine's 33rd Separate Assault Regiment. Together, those units destroyed the Russian forces in Mali Shebaki so decisively that they were able to roll into the village and once again raise the Ukrainian flag. We see that in a reel shared on Facebook, which announced Mali's liberation, along with a message. Units of the 24th Separate Assault Battalion IDAR, together with their brothers-in-arms from the 33rd Separate Assault Regiment, raised the Ukrainian flag in the settlement of Mali Shebaki in the Zaporizhzhia front, the post declared. The settlement is under the control of the Defense Forces of Ukraine. The post hailed the coordination of the two units involved, which we can see in the use of the Ukrainian word pobratimami. This word loosely translates to brothers-in-arms, showcasing that Ukraine's new assault strategy is bonding these troops better than ever before. Russia may attack in uncoordinated waves to get results. Ukraine counters Russia's gains through teamwork, dedication, and an ability to unleash coordinated hell on its opponents. Remember the name Shebaki too. We'll be coming back to that in a moment. For now, there's a certain level of extra symbolism attached to Ukraine's act of raising its flag in the recaptured village. Such an act is common, of course. Raising a flag has always been a symbol of victory. However, Ukraine may have just used this opportunity to counter something Russia has been doing with increasing frequency in recent months: infiltrating villages to falsely raise flags even though Russia hasn't captured anything. We need only take a look at what happened at Verbova to see that new Russian tactic in action. At the beginning of October, Russia claimed that its troops had captured the small village. This is the settlement of Verbova that is in the Dnipropetrovsk region of Ukraine, rather than its more famous cousin in the Zaporizhzhia region. Russia was lying, as the handful of its soldiers who entered Verbova were destroyed by Ukraine within minutes. Russia's propaganda play with the fake flag raising is explored in one of our videos, so check it out if you want to learn more. But you only really need to know two things. Russia fakes its flag raising, Ukraine does it because it recaptures territory. Further confirmation that Mali Shebaki is in Ukraine's hands comes from Colonel Valentin Manko, who leads the Assault Forces Directorate of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. In a Facebook video, he confirmed that the Mali Shebaki assault was a success, in addition to adding some extra information. Manko says that Ukraine also managed to clear the nearby and the similarly named village of Shebaki during its assault, which is why we told you to remember the name. Plus, Ukraine's assault troops also managed to partially liberate another small village named Stepova, making October 12th an extremely productive day for Ukraine as it attempts to push deeper into occupied parts of Zaporizhzhia. A productive day for Ukraine is a very bad day for Russia, and Manko explained just how bad. The village clearances and liberations were part of a concerted Ukrainian push into Zaporizhzhia that saw it regain a large amount of territory in a single day. As Euromaidan press reports, Ukraine managed to move 3.5 kilometers forward into Zaporizhzhia along a 5-kilometer line of the front. That amounts to a 3.1-mile wide contingent of Ukraine's forces pushing just over 2 miles into Zaporizhzhia, demolishing Russian forces as they went, and perhaps setting the stage for more assaults in the future. This wasn't just a very bad day for Russia, it was outright painful. As CNN reported on October 1st, Russia was already having to deal with the pace of its advance slowing substantially following a summer offensive that failed to achieve any of the objectives that Putin had outlined for his troops. September saw Russia take just 259 square kilometers of Ukraine for the entire month, which amounts to about 100 square miles. That was 44% less territory than Russia managed to occupy in August, which brings us back to what Ukraine just achieved. Russia advancing slowly means that every piece of territory it gains is like gold dust to Putin, as he attempts to create the perception that Ukraine can't stop Russia from winning the war. When Russia loses territory to Ukraine's counter-assaults, that perception is shattered. Mali Shebaki just proved that Ukraine is just as capable of taking terrain as Russia, and with Ukraine's new assault strategy, this may just be the beginning of Putin's problems. We'll revisit the topic of Ukraine's new assaults later in the video, but before that, the recapture of Mali Shebaki and the surrounding villages will hurt Russia for another reason, as Euromaidan press points out. It says that Russia had only managed to reach the outskirts of Mali Shebaki and the surrounding villages as recently as March 2025, following a push into the nearby settlement of Piatikati.
3.5 kilometers in one brutal push. When I first heard that, I thought, this isn't creeping trench warfare, this is a shock assault that recalibrates what we thought possible on this front. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Strike Point Media channel. Make sure you hit subscribe and like this video so you don't miss future updates. Today we're diving deep into that bold breakthrough. Ukraine rips through Russian front, 3.5 km breakthrough in one brutal push. What drove this success? What does it expose about both sides, and what might it foreshadow in the weeks ahead? Let's get into it. From the exterior or outward view, this breakthrough looks like a sudden rupture in what had been a grinding stalemate. For months, the front lines in sectors of Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia have crept forward or oscillated by a few hundred meters at a time. But this time, reports indicate that Ukrainian forces punched through over 3.5 kilometers in a single push near Orikhiv and Mali Sherbeki. On satellite maps, one can see the wedge-shaped area of penetration, where Russian trenches, fortifications, and mine belts were sliced through. The exterior signature of the attack is aggressive, concentrated firepower, engineering units following close behind to clear obstacles, and mobile detachments exploiting gaps. The Russian side's lines appear disrupted, with secondary defenses stressed and in some places overrun. Some reports suggest that the line expanded more than 5 kilometers in depth by consolidating flanks. Now let's step inside that breach, the interior of the operation, which is where the real story lies. Imagine being in that assault column. The first wave moves under suppression fire, sappers and engineers push ahead to clear mines, barbed wire, trenches, and obstacles. Behind them, mechanized infantry, likely in armored personnel carriers, IFVs, and supported by mobile anti-tank teams, pour through. Drone and artillery spotters overhead feed real-time targeting. Electronic warfare assets jam or blind defenders. As you push forward, you cross terrain that was once no man's land but now flickers between Russian trenches and Ukrainian consolidation points. Inside that breach, command and control must be tight. Units have to coordinate across squads so that flanks are secured, so that momentum doesn't stall, so that gaps don't become traps. Resupply must follow: ammunition, medevac, fuel, engineering gear. Communications lines must hold despite Russian attempts to jam or intercept. The units inside the breakthrough must be ready to fight in close quarters against defenders trying to counterattack from shell holes, old trenches, entrenchments. They must fight building to building if towns or hamlets lie in the path, street to street, utilizing close-range fire, grenades, clearing operations. What's particularly impressive is how the depth was exploited. After the initial breach, follow-on forces likely spread laterally to widen and consolidate, preventing Russian forces from pinching off the salient. Meanwhile, reserve forces are staged to pour in and stabilize the new line. The interior is a chaotic, intense space of combined arms: infantry, armor, drones, artillery, engineers, electronic warfare, logistics, all dancing in a lethal choreography. Performance is our next lens. How well did this assault perform and what factors made it effective? First, speed. To cover 3.5 km in one push in contested territory is no small feat. It suggests that Ukrainian forces achieved overwhelming local superiority of firepower, suppression, and coordination. The enemy's ability to react must have been degraded, perhaps by prior artillery or drone bombardment or by misallocation of reserves. Second, surprise and timing. A push like this likely leveraged a moment when Russian defenses were weakest, whether visibility, logistics, or distraction elsewhere. The fact that gains are reported in both Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia sectors, for instance the Orikhiv advance over 3 km in Zaporizhzhia, suggests simultaneous pressure across multiple axes. Third, engineering integration. Breaching mines, obstacles, fortifications quickly is critical. The faster the engineer-sapper teams clear paths for the follow-on forces, the less vulnerability the assault suffers. The performance suggests that these support units kept pace rather than lagged. Fourth, combined arms synergy. Drones spotting, artillery adjusting, infantry and armor coordination, suppression by mortars or MLRS all must mesh seamlessly. The performance implies high proficiency in integrating modern ISR intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and kinetic systems. Fifth, sustainability and consolidation. It's not just about making a hole but holding and expanding it. The initial push was deep. Ukrainian forces must now anchor the flanks and defend against Russian counterattacks. Early reports mention heavy Russian losses and intense fighting in Donetsk region. Now, what about safety or risk mitigation in this type of operation? Every assault push is lethal, so the safety features are really protective measures and planning safeguards. One is suppression. Continuous fire on Russian defensive positions to minimize enemy return fire while assault elements move. Another is smoke, concealment, night or low visibility windows to reduce exposure. Third is counter-battery protection, moving artillery, radars, and sensors to neutralize enemy guns and reduce the danger to advance units. Fourth, flank protection and reserve buffers. You must secure your flanks so that defenders don't encircle or counterstrike. Fifth, redundancy in communications and fallback plans. If a comm link fails, units must still coordinate fallback paths. Sixth, casualty evacuation, planning medevac routes, field dressing, trauma care, en route. Seventh, risk of overextension, pushing too far too fast without support can leave your troops exposed. That's always a danger here. The fact that the Ukrainian push reportedly sustained itself and held ground suggests that planners anticipated and mitigated such risk. Let's talk unique selling points of this assault, what makes it stand out, and what message it sends beyond the battlefield. 1. Scale and boldness. In a war known for incremental gains and attritional grinding, a 3.5 km push in one go is psychologically powerful. It suggests capability, audacity, and momentum. 2. Signaling. This kind of breakthrough signals to Ukraine's allies, domestic public, and to Russia, Ukraine can still deliver surprises. It ups morale and may affect Russian planning. 3. Learning and adaptation. It shows Ukraine's ability to integrate Western weapons, drones, ISR, and modern tactics into doctrine. It suggests a maturing military operation capability. 4. Pressure on Russian logistics and defense depth. A breach forces Russia to commit reserves, disrupts defensive belts, forces redeployment, and stresses their supply lines. 5. Leverage for diplomacy. Battlefield success can translate into stronger negotiation positions or external support. Next, price not in dollars but cost in lives, materiel, attrition, and opportunity. Every breakthrough comes at a heavy price. Reports already speak of significant Russian frontline losses during the Donetsk contest. Ukrainian forces also likely suffered casualties, though their losses are less often publicized. The cost in armor, vehicles, drones, ammunition, fuel, replacements, medical support, and logistics is huge. The opportunity cost is that resources used here cannot be used elsewhere. So while the breakthrough is celebrated, it may stretch Ukrainian supply chains, require reinforcement, and invite fierce counterattacks. The price will likely be paid over coming weeks: replenishment, casualty care, consolidation, and deflection of Russian reactions. To sum up, this is a high-stakes gamble that appears to have paid off, but only if Ukraine can hold and expand. In conclusion, this 3.5 km push is not just a localized victory, it's symbolic, strategic, and risky. It demonstrates that even on a long, brutal front, breakthrough remains possible when planning, coordination, technology, and will align. But it doesn't guarantee success in the broader campaign. The enemy will respond, reserves will flow, counterattacks will come. The real test now is whether Ukraine can transform this rupture into sustained advantage, anchoring positions, consolidating flanks, and preserving the momentum. If you enjoyed this deep dive into that bold breakthrough, stay tuned. I'll be back with follow-up analysis as the front progresses. Thanks for watching Strike Point Media. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the bell so you'll be the first to